Earlier, Matt touched on Leach's coaching tree, showcasing how inspiring he was for those who worked with or played for him. But his reach extended far beyond that.
KCBD News Channel 11's Patricia Perry tells us how he impacted even those who were not his players, including more future team leaders.
He was a coach during what some call the glory days at Texas Tech. Coach Mike Leach is someone Lubbockites have never forgotten because of how he carried himself on and off the field.
You'd see his personality, and I think that's what really made him just an overall legendary coach, as we can tell by, what's happened recently, just the outpouring of prayers and thoughts and everything.
Part of that personality is why he was known as a pirate, telling his players to swing your sword. Brandon Solis said it's a mentality Tech football hasn't had in a long time, but he hopes it's coming back now.
They always had that fight, which I think Joey McGuire is not a pirate in his own sense, but he has that Mike Leach mentality of just fighting it on the field.
It's in credit to what Coach Leach established on the Jones field, and Leach recognized what he had done with the team in 2021.
Well, I had a hand in building this. I mean, it's a kind of a tough, never surrender mentality, which I'd like to think I had a lot to do with elevating that.
Solis says McGuire's got big shoes to fill, but he's on the right track.
Nobody's felt that here in Lubbock in football since that Mike Leach era, so I think that says a lot about Joey, and it says a lot about Coach Leach, setting that bar.
And even those who aren't coaching yet are inspired by Leach.
Honestly, I'm actually working on changing my major to do coaching because I've always liked what he did, and I was kind of like, you know what, maybe this is a sign to pursue coaching as a career.
Court Comer says he admires Coach Leach for everything that makes him the pirate.
I think it's just he's unique, he's a true character, and he doesn't take himself too seriously even though he's really successful.
Patricia Perry, KCBD News Channel 11.